You think you're a law-abiding citizen? That's adorable. The reality is the line between a normal day and a federal offense in America is so thin, it's practically invisible. We're not talking about master criminals here. We're exploring 49 bizarre, infuriating, and hilarious moments when regular people doing regular things, like baking bread or cleaning a bike chain, suddenly found themselves on the wrong side of a very weird law. 1. A tourist in New Orleans, filled with the pure, unadulterated spirit of Mardi Gras, decides to toss a string of beads from a balcony to his buddy in the crowd below. His aim, however, was less than perfect. The cheap plastic necklace landed squarely on a police horse, a stoic, four-legged officer of the law. This wasn't just a clumsy throw. Under a bizarrely specific livestock interference statute, it was legally deemed an assault. The man spent his night not soaking in the jazz-filled air, but in a city jail cell, left to contemplate how a 5-cent party favor managed to turn him into a cop-assaulting menace to society. 2. On a majestic riverboat cruising the Mississippi, a well-meaning tourist decided to engage in a little old-fashioned superstition, tossing a handful of quarters overboard to buy some good luck. Unfortunately, the only thing they bought was the attention of the U.S. Coast Guard. According to glorious federal anti-littering laws, those coins weren't a hopeful offering to the river gods. They were classified as dumping solid waste into a navigable waterway, an offense legally identical to chucking a used car battery off the deck. The gambler was issued a hefty ticket, learning a brutal lesson that when you try to buy luck from the government, there's always a hefty convenience fee. 3. A man in Pennsylvania, thrilled with his recent eBay purchase of military-grade night vision goggles, did what anyone would do. He went into his boring suburban backyard to test them out. The problem? His property line backed up directly to a county airport. According to federal law, exporting such technology is a major crime, and commercial airplanes are legally considered foreign-bound carriers. Therefore, by simply looking at a 747 taking off, he was technically engaging in international arms trafficking from his patio. He went to bed a curious hobbyist and woke up as a person of interest, all without ever renewing his passport. 4. An Atlanta resident and proud owner of a large boa constrictor thought a walk in the park would be a nice way for his pet to get some sun. He was a friendly guy, even letting curious onlookers hold the snake for a few selfies. But the city's municipal code doesn't have a chapter for being a cool snake dude. It does, however, have very specific rules for running an exotic animal exhibit, which requires safety barriers, professional handlers, and a permit costing $400 a day. His casual stroll was instantly reclassified as an unlicensed pop-up zoo, landing him in a tangle of fines that could buy a lifetime supply of frozen mice. 5. A rookie camper in a Colorado national forest, trying to be a model of responsible outdoorsmanship, scrupulously gathered only dead, fallen aspen branches to build a small, cozy fire. He thought he was doing nature a favor. He was wrong. The National Forest Service, in its infinite wisdom, prohibits the removal of any wood, dead or alive, without a permit. As he was contentedly roasting a marshmallow, a ranger appeared from the trees to write him a citation, proving that in the great American wilderness, the only thing you're allowed to gather for free is a criminal record for trying to stay warm. 6. Down in the Louisiana bayou, a swamp tour captain, a true innovator in his field, decided to solve the problem of shy alligators. His solution? A Bluetooth speaker and a curated playlist of alligator mating bellows blasted across the water. The tourists loved it. It was like Gator-palooza. The state's wildlife officers, however, saw him not as an entertainer but as a high-tech poacher. Using an electronic call to lure a protected species is legally the exact same crime as hunting them with spotlights at night. The captain learned a harsh lesson that, while technology can enhance the customer experience, it can also significantly enhance your federal charges. 7. The serene dawn in Washington's Yakima Valley was being shattered daily by what neighbors described as an artillery duel. The source wasn't an invasion, but a single orchardist protecting his cherries from birds with several propane cannons. He was averaging 40 blasts an hour. The county noise ordinance generously allows 4. When deputies arrived, they didn't have a citation for annoying the entire county. So they used the next best thing. The same one used for blasting rave music from a warehouse at 3 a.m. The cherries were saved, but his relationship with every human within a 5-mile radius was permanently obliterated. 8. Seeking the ultimate state of Zen, a Vermont yoga studio led its patrons to a serene, historic covered bridge for a meditation session. As they sat perched on the wooden railing, basking in tranquility, a police officer arrived, not to join their quest for enlightenment, but to write every single one of them a ticket. Why? Because that charming rustic bridge was legally classified as a vehicular thoroughfare. Loitering on it for more than 10 minutes is a traffic violation. Their spiritual journey to inner peace was abruptly rerouted by the Department of Transportation, a powerful guru they had clearly underestimated. 9. An Illinois retiree with a passion for amateur radio decided to take his hobby to the next level by bouncing signals off the moon. This niche activity, known as Earth-Moon-Earth communication, is a respected feat of engineering. His mistake was accidentally using a frequency band reserved for military satellites. Before he could even brag to his radio club, a politely worded but utterly terrifying letter from the Federal Communications Commission arrived. He had successfully achieved interstellar reach with his backyard antenna, and in doing so, also achieved the kind of immediate, undivided attention from the federal government that most people spend their lives trying to avoid. 10. In a classic Brooklyn tale of urban agriculture, a rooftop gardener installed 2 beehives to help pollinate his precious heirloom tomatoes. He was so proud, he even made TikToks about it. His dream of a self-sustaining hipster paradise came crashing down when a swarm of his bees decided to colonize a neighbor's balcony. City inspectors, when called to the scene, discovered his hives violated mandatory setback and screening barrier regulations. The violations were filed under the same health code used to regulate rats and roaches in restaurants, proving that in New York City, even bees need a good lawyer and a zoning variance. 11. A Michigan homeowner with an eye for aesthetics decided the city-issued gray garbage bin clashed horribly with her prize-winning tulips. So, she swapped it for a stylish, pastel pink can that perfectly complemented her home's color scheme. What she didn't know was that the municipal code mandated uniform container colors for the city's automated collection trucks. The sanitation workers, unable to service the non-compliant receptacle, skipped her house for 2 weeks straight. She was then fined for the overflowing trash, learning that in the war between curb appeal and bureaucratic uniformity, the bureaucrats always win. 12. In the treacherous black ice season of Montana, a ranch hand kept studded tire chains on his pickup truck well past the March 31st legal deadline. For him, it wasn't a fashion statement. It was a matter of not sliding into a ditch. But on the very first day of April, a state trooper heard the telltale clanking on the pavement and pulled him over. The citation wasn't for a simple equipment violation. It was for using street racing spikes. The very tool that kept him safely on the road was legally reclassified as something out of a Fast and Furious movie, driving his bank account into a ditch instead. 13. A homeowner in Atlanta, concerned about a massive city-owned oak tree dropping huge branches on his driveway, decided to take preventative action. He carefully trimmed a few of the most threatening limbs, a simple act of property maintenance. Or so he thought. Urban forestry rules strictly forbid pruning heritage trees without an official arborist's permit. He soon received a bill from the city for the unauthorized alteration of the municipal canopy. The charge was so grandly worded, it sounded less like he trimmed a tree and more like he had personally vandalized the sky. 14. A Wisconsin ice fisherman was having a perfect day out on a frozen lake. He had his gear, a thermos of coffee, and a Bluetooth speaker blasting some Creedence Clearwater revival. His peaceful afternoon was interrupted by Department of Natural Resources officers who promptly wrote him a ticket. His crime? Acoustic harassment of wildlife. Apparently, the same legal clause used to bust reckless jet skiers for chasing loons also applies to a guy enjoying some classic rock. He learned that day that the fish apparently are more of a smooth jazz crowd. 15. An aspiring wildlife photographer in Alaska had a brilliant idea. Launch a drone to get breathtaking aerial shots of grizzly bears chasing salmon in a river. The resulting footage was certainly dramatic, just not in the way he intended. National park rules forbid any aircraft from disturbing wildlife. The high-pitched buzzing of his quadcopter sent the massive bears scattering in panic like, well, furry bowling pins. Park rangers quickly descended, confiscated his drone's memory card, and handed him a citation so expensive it could have funded a professionally crewed helicopter flight. 16. A thrifty North Dakotan, dreaming of a lush summer garden watered for free, rigged up a system of 5 large blue barrels to his home's downspouts. It was a brilliant DIY water conservation plan, except for one tiny detail. He lives in a state that follows century-old prior appropriation water laws. This means every single drop of rain that falls is technically already owned by someone downstream. When a state water rights inspector spotted his setup, the man discovered that collecting the rain falling on your own roof can be treated as theft from the municipal reservoir. 17. On a sunny afternoon in Ohio, a recent art school graduate decided to beautify a drab downtown sidewalk with a massive, intricate mural of a koi pond, all done in chalk. He figured it was harmless, temporary public art that the next rainstorm would wash away. The city, however, disagreed. Their ordinance labels any unapproved design on public pavement as graffiti, regardless of the medium. Before the rain could do its job, city street sweepers arrived and power blasted his masterpiece into oblivion, leaving him with nothing but a fine that would last much longer than the chalk ever did. 18. 2 Michigan engineers, likely with a bit too much time on their hands, built a rocket out of soda cans in a cornfield to test a new nozzle design. Their launch was a success, rocketing their creation high into the sky. Unfortunately, it climbed directly into controlled airspace, as they had forgotten to file a notice with the Federal Aviation Administration. Moments later, a low-flying crop duster pilot radioed air traffic control to report a UFO. The subsequent federal fine for their unauthorized aerospace adventure grounded their hobby harder than gravity ever could. 19. After an unavoidable collision with a deer in rural Arkansas, a family figured, waste not, want not. They loaded the carcass into the back of their pickup, planning for a freezer full of venison. What they didn't know is that state law requires anyone salvaging roadkill to get an official tag within 24 hours. Their crucial mistake was proudly posting pictures of their impromptu barbecue on Instagram. Before the steaks were even off the grill, wildlife officers, acting with the speed of social media detectives, had tracked them down and issued a citation for their undocumented dinner. 20. A Utah mom, in a heartwarming gesture of support, baked a batch of homemade cookies to mail to troops serving overseas. When she got to the post office, she dutifully filled out the customs form, declaring the contents simply as gifts. But within that care package lurked a secret, dangerous ingredient: peanut butter. According to international shipping regulations, peanut butter is a restricted agricultural product. Her package was promptly seized by customs, and she was issued a formal warning, the kind usually reserved for people trying to smuggle uninspected cattle feed or exotic insects. Her attempt to send a taste of home ended with her being flagged as a potential threat to global agriculture. 21. An Alabama couple, ready for a family cookout at grandma's house, hit the road with a cooler full of their specialty, ribs marinated in homemade moonshine. As they stopped for gas, they happened to cross into a dry county, a place where alcohol is strictly forbidden. A deputy with a keen sense of smell noticed the distinct aroma wafting from their car. Transporting spirituous beverages through these jurisdictions is still a misdemeanor, and it doesn't matter if that beverage is soaking into a rack of pork. Their cookout plans were delayed by a new appointment on their calendar, a court date. 22. A Texas dad went all out building the ultimate treehouse for his kids, complete with a zip line that soared from the platform over the fence and into the backyard. The only problem was that it sailed 4 inches into a utility easement, that little strip of land the county owns. A county inspector, who must have been having a slow day, declared the epic treehouse an encroaching improvement. This put it in the same legal category as an illegally constructed billboard. For the crime of a few inches of airspace, he was faced with fines and orders to tear it down, a penalty far greater than his entire Home Depot bill. 23. A retiree in Wyoming thought he would add a bit of magic to a local hiking trail by creating a whimsical gnome village. He painstakingly crafted tiny clay cottages and glued them to the roots of pine trees, even adding a miniature post office for effect. Hikers loved it, and it became a social media sensation. The U.S. Forest Service, however, was not charmed. They cited him for placing foreign objects on federal land, systematically dismantled the entire ceramic community, and crushed his dream of becoming a premier developer in the fairy tale real estate market. 24. After fixing his kids' bikes, a Rhode Island dad decided to use a life hack he saw on YouTube to clean the old, greasy chains. The video showed you could just set them on fire in a metal drum to burn off the gunk. It worked, but it also produced a plume of black smoke. According to the EPA, the open-air burning of metal creates visible particulates, which is legally classified as hazardous waste processing without a license. Before he could even admire his clean bike chains, an environmental protection agent was at his door, proving that some YouTube hacks can go from helpful to toxic in 60 seconds. 25. At a desert art festival in Nevada, a free-spirited individual decided to send their good intentions out into the cosmos by launching several biodegradable sky lanterns. As these flaming orbs of hope drifted gracefully into the night sky, they also drifted directly over federal land during the peak of wildfire season. Bureau of Land Management rangers intercepted him, not to share in his spiritual moment, but to hand him a fine so large he could have used it to buy a small, professionally managed rocket launch. The universe, it seems, sometimes answers your wishes with a federal invoice. 26. A New Hampshire couple wanted their gender reveal party to have a little mountain drama. So they climbed to the summit of Mount Monadnock at sunset and fired a handheld rescue flare. The resulting cloud of pink smoke was indeed spectacular. It was also identical to a distress signal used by lost or injured hikers. Within minutes, search and rescue teams had scrambled helicopters, and other hikers began to panic. The parents-to-be ended up with a bill for the massive emergency response, a sum large enough to cover the baby's diapers, formula, and first-semester college tuition, all from one puff of smoke. 27. For that perfect, Pinterest-worthy wedding photo, a couple in Alabama had their guests wave indoor sparklers during their grand exit from a rustic barn reception. The pictures looked magical. The local fire marshal, who was not a guest, was less impressed. The local fire code strictly bans any and all pyrotechnics inside wooden structures over 100 years old. The newlyweds, happily ever after, now includes a professional photo of them smiling lovingly, with a fire marshal in full gear standing in the background, his clipboard shining more brightly than the bride's diamond tiara. 28. The high school marching band in a small Oklahoma town was practicing their halftime show on the football field late one night. As the trumpets blared after 10 p.m., the sound carried into the sleepy surrounding neighborhoods. The town's noise ordinance, however, kicks in at 9 p.m. sharp. Police arrived with a decibel meter and clocked the band at 92 decibels, the equivalent of running a chainsaw next to someone's bedroom window. The drum major had to trade her baton for a citation, learning a hard lesson that musical dynamics can have legal consequences after dark. 29. A fisherman in Florida was so proud of catching a massive Goliath grouper that he immediately took a video for Snapchat. He hoisted the giant fish out of the water for a quick selfie before releasing it back into the ocean, seemingly unharmed. What he didn't realize is that federal protection rules for this species are so strict that even briefly lifting one from the water for a photo is illegal. The fish swam away just fine, but the man's bank account took a direct hit. A $500 fine for a trophy picture of a fish he didn't even get to eat. 30. Remember when you used to sing Happy Birthday at a restaurant? It feels innocent, but before the song officially entered the public domain in 2016, it was a potential crime. A cafe owner in Minnesota learned this the hard way after he led a loud, cheerful chorus for a customer's birthday and posted a video of it on YouTube. He soon received a demand letter from the music publisher's lawyers for licensing fees under copyright law. His simple cupcake celebration had turned into a legal battle over intellectual property, all because of a song everyone knows. 31. While walking the Las Vegas Strip, a tourist casually tossed his leftover French fries to a flock of pigeons, a scene repeated in cities across the world every single day. He was immediately approached by an officer and handed a ticket. In Vegas, a city ordinance treats feeding pigeons as a public health violation, on par with illegal dumping. The fine? $1,000. Considering the fries probably cost about $5, that's a 200-fold markup, an incredible return on investment that would make even the most ruthless casino owner blush with envy. 32. A Louisiana chef, feeling generous, decided to overnight a large pot of his famous homemade jambalaya to his old college buddy in Oregon. To keep it fresh, he packed it with frozen water bottles. The problem is that USDA regulations consider any interstate shipment of a meat product to be commercial, requiring official inspection stamps and permits. His friend received the delicious, swamp-scented package, but the chef received a stern letter from the government reminding him that, in their eyes, he wasn't just shipping dinner. He was operating an unlicensed mail-order meat processing plant. 33. A Florida teenager seeing a business opportunity caught an invasive iguana in his backyard and sold it to a local pet store for a little extra cash. It seems like a public service, right? Wrong. State wildlife laws require a special transport permit, even for pest species. To make matters worse, the iguana later escaped from the store's quarantine area. The shop got a fine, and the kid got a crash course in entrepreneurship. No matter how annoying the reptile, there's always a clause in the regulations you forgot to read. 34. A group of tourists on a Rhode Island beach spent hours building the sandcastle of their dreams, a massive complex with 3-foot walls, a functional moat, and an elaborate drawbridge. It was a true work of art until a jogger, not paying attention, face-planted directly into one of their ramparts. Blocking the public right-of-way with temporary structures, even ones made of sand, is illegal. A lifeguard ordered them to dismantle their masterpiece, and they faced a penalty that was significantly taller than their castle's highest turret. 35. We've all been there, racing to catch a train, faced with a slow-moving herd of commuters clogging the turnstiles. One New Jersey man, seeing his train at the platform, made a split-second decision and slipped through a clearly marked emergency exit gate. It seemed like a harmless shortcut. It wasn't. Transit cops materialized out of thin air and nabbed him before he could take 2 steps. His charge? Unauthorized passage through an emergency egress. Not only did he miss his train, but he was also handed a fine that cost more than a monthly pass, proving that, in the Garden State, the fastest way to the platform is often the most expensive path to a court date. 36. A man in Florida decorating his man cave bought what he thought was a stunning piece of Americana online, a vintage taxidermy bald eagle. It looked perfect mounted on his wall, a majestic symbol of freedom. What he didn't know is that the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act makes it a federal felony to possess, sell, or purchase any part of these birds, no matter how old the specimen is. His patriotic decor was discovered, and federal wildlife agents paid him a visit, treating him less like a homeowner and more like an international poaching kingpin. His symbol of liberty quickly became evidence in a federal case against him. 37. An Arizona retiree with a heart of gold and a talent for baking installed a wood-fired oven in her backyard. She would bake beautiful loaves of bread and leave them on a table out front with a simple sign: "Take one, leave a smile." It was a pure act of community kindness. But the county health department saw it differently. To them, she was an unlicensed food service establishment. They shut her down for failing to have a commercial-grade, 3-sink wash station for her backyard operation. And the delicious, crusty bread? It was confiscated as evidence, a carb-loaded contraband in the war on neighborly goodwill. 38. In rural Missouri, a wholesome seed swap meetup was in full swing. Gardeners gathered to trade seeds and share tips, a tradition as old as farming itself. The idyllic scene was shattered when one friendly gardener began handing out heirloom tomato seedlings he had grown himself. State agriculture officials, who were apparently monitoring the event, swooped in and shut it down. His crime? Distributing unregistered propagative material. Every plant, even a tiny tomato, start given freely to a neighbor, requires official paperwork. He just wanted to share the joy of a good brandy wine. Instead, he got a lesson in how thick regulatory fertilizer can be spread. 39. The host of a Nebraska book club thought she'd liven up the vote for the next novel by raffling off a few of her famous homemade pies. A fun, harmless incentive, right? Wrong. The State Gaming Commission apparently got a tip and crashed the literary discussion with clipboards in hand. It turns out that any raffle involving consideration and merely showing up for the book club counted is legally an unlicensed lottery. One moment you're passionately debating the merits of Tolstoy, the next you're trying to explain the finer points of pastry-based gambling to humorless men in government blazers. 40. An Oregon cyclist, fed up with a dangerous stretch of road and the city's inaction, took matters into his own hands. Armed with a paint roller and a bucket of white paint, he created his own People's Bike Lane. Fellow cyclists cheered his rogue act of civic improvement. The Department of Transportation, however, was not impressed. Altering official traffic control devices is a misdemeanor. The DIY urban planner was served a court summons for his efforts, and within hours, a city crew was on site, efficiently erasing his work and returning the lane to the cars. 41. While strolling along Boston's historic Freedom Trail, a visiting history professor saw a loose cobblestone and impulsively pocketed it, thinking it would make a fantastic prop for his lectures. He fundamentally misunderstood the concept of historic preservation. These aren't just any old rocks. They are individually cataloged historic artifacts. A park ranger cited him under the very same statute used to prosecute black market antiquities smugglers. There's nothing that enhances an academic reputation quite like having to explain to a tenure committee that you were arrested for stealing a piece of Paul Revere's street. 42. In the spirit of St. Patrick's Day, a Kansas City baker had a brilliant idea to create a local spectacle. He dumped a large container of eco-friendly, non-toxic green dye into the creek behind his shop, dreaming of a miniature version of the famous Chicago River celebration. The environmental regulators arrived faster than you can find a four-leaf clover. Because any foreign substance discharged into a waterway, even if it's harmless food coloring, requires a state water quality permit. His creek ran a festive shade of green for a few hours, but his bank account was about to be bled of a whole lot of green for a very long time. 43. Walking along a California beach, a well-meaning couple came across a lone seal pup crying on the sand. Believing it was abandoned and in distress, they did what they thought was the heroic thing. They wrapped the pup in a towel, put it in the back of their Prius, and started driving to the nearest aquarium. They were promptly stopped by wildlife officials who informed them that not only are mother seals supposed to leave their pups alone while hunting, but rescuing one is a serious federal crime under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Their attempt to save Flipper turned into a charge of marine mammal kidnapping. 44. A backpacker in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park found a beautiful patch of delicate wildflowers and decided it was the perfect backdrop for her Instagram feed. She plucked a small bouquet to pose with, aiming for that perfect, sapsha, blessed nature aesthetic. What she didn't know was that those particular flowers were on an endangered species list longer than her phone's contact list. Park rangers intercepted her mid-photo shoot, and she quickly learned that the hashtag #YourFlowerPower can turn into hashtag federal charges before you even have a chance to apply a filter. 45. A trendy craft brewery in New Hampshire, looking to embrace the autumn spirit, decided to decorate their taproom with beautiful fallen maple leaves from outside. It looked rustic and festive, but state agricultural inspectors saw something else entirely. According to health regulations, using untreated natural materials in a food and beverage establishment is a major violation, as it could invite pests. The colorful leaves were officially classified as unapproved garnish, and the inspectors swept them out with the efficiency of a Category 5 hurricane. 46. While stuck in a long school pickup line, a Massachusetts dad tried to entertain his bored kids and the family cat with a cheap green laser pointer. In a moment of playful distraction, a stray beam shot out through the car's sunroof, hit the evening haze, and bounced directly into the windshield of a state police helicopter on approach to Logan Airport. Federal aviation code doesn't care if you were aiming for a cat toy. That stray beam is treated like a hostile act. The next lights he saw weren't the glowing eyes of his cat, but the flashing red and blue of a patrol car in his rearview mirror. 47. To take her neighborhood's Easter egg hunt to the next level, a tech-savvy California mom programmed her drone to fly over the cul-de-sac and shower the street with plastic eggs filled with candy. The kids went wild. It was an Easter miracle. The Federal Aviation Administration, however, did not share their enthusiasm. According to their rules, any airborne package delivery by a drone requires a Part 135 certification, and it doesn't matter if the cargo is vital medicine or cheap jelly beans. Her festive flight plan earned her a violation notice usually reserved for rogue Amazon delivery prototypes. 48. A hip Atlanta bar decided to host a silent disco, an event where everyone wears wireless headphones and dances to their own beat in a room that is, to the outside observer, completely quiet. But they forgot to check the city's ancient legal codes. Atlanta still enforces a Prohibition-era law requiring a special public dancing license. Code enforcement officers entered the silent room, saw people grooving, and shut the party down mid-moonwalk, proving that it is, in fact, possible to get a noise violation when there is absolutely no noise. 49. During a deep freeze festival in Minnesota, a talented ice sculptor carved a magnificent 6-foot-tall throne on the surface of a frozen lake. It was a huge hit, with festival-goers lining up to take pictures on it. But Department of Natural Resources officers saw it not as a piece of temporary art, but as an unauthorized structure. And an unauthorized structure, they informed him, requires a building permit, even if its foundation is frozen water and its scheduled demolition is the first sunny day in March. He had created a chair. The bureaucracy created a blizzard of paperwork. So, it's clear that in a battle between common sense and a forgotten city ordinance, common sense gets handcuffed every time. Now for the real question. Forget these 49 stories. I want to know the single most infuriatingly stupid ticket, fine, or warning you have ever personally received. Don't be shy. Get in the comments and expose the most ridiculous piece of bureaucracy you've ever faced. If you enjoy a healthy dose of governmental absurdity, hit the like button. And subscribe, because the rabbit hole of ridiculous facts goes much, much deeper.